शुक्लां भरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु, सहनौ भुनक्तु, सह वीर्यं करवावहै, तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। अगजानन पद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्तं भक्तानाम् एकदन्तमुपास्महे। श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां
अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां
नमः।
नमः।
वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रीहयग्रीवमुपास्महे। श्रीहयग्रीवमूर्तये नमः। सरस्वति नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। श्रीमहासरस्वत्यै नमः। उमाकोमलहस्ताब्जसम्भावितललाटकं हिरण्यकुण्डलं वन्दे कुमारं पुष्करस्रजं। வெற்றிவேல் முருகனுக்கு ஹர ஹரோஹரா. லோகவீரியம் மகாபூஜ்யம் சர்வரக்ஷாகரம் விபும் பார்வதி ஹிருதயானந்தம் சாஸ்தாரம் பிரணமாம்யகம். சுவாமியே சரணமையப்பா. वागर्ताविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्त प्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। श्रीपार्वती परमेश्वराभ्यां नमः। कोमलं पूजयन् वेणुं श्यामलोऽयं कुमारकः वेदवेद्यं परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। पीताम्बरं करविराजितचक्रशङ्खकौमोदकी सरसिजं करुणासमुद्रं राधासहायम् अतिसुन्दरमन्दहासं वातालयेशम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। कृष्णो रक्षतु मां चराचरगुरुः कृष्णं नमस्ये सदा। कृष्णेनैव सुरक्षितोऽहमसकृत् कृष्णाय दत्तं मनः। कृष्णादेव समुद्भवो मम विभो कृष्णस्य दासोऽस्म्यहम्। कृष्णे भक्तिरचञ्चलास्तु भगवन् हे कृष्ण तुभ्यं नमः। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं। नम्राणां सन्निधत्ते सततमपि पुरस्तैरणभ्यर्थितानपि आर्तान् कामानजस्रं वितरति परमानन्दसान्द्रां गतिं च। इत्थं निःशेषलभ्यो निरवधिकफलः पारिजातो हरे त्वं क्षुद्रं तं शक्रवाटी ध्रुममभिलषति व्यर्थमर्त्यव्रजोऽयम्। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं। श्रीभट्टपादम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। वंशी विभूषितकरात् नवनीरधाभात् पीताम्बरात् अरुणबिम्बफलादरोष्टात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखात् अरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने. കൈരണ്ടും കൂപ്പി ഞാൻ വീണ്ടുമീറക്കുന്നു നീരജലോചന നിന്നോടായി. ഇതിനു മന്യനെ കുമ്പിടേണ്ടാത്തോരോ രീതിയിൽ നീ എന്നെ പാലിക്കെന്നായി. കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ. Good morning everyone. Class. All right, since we just started 10 minutes late, I'll skip through the review today. So we'll get directly into 93 because it's a big chapter. So I think we did the first two stanzas of 93 already, but I have to explain the meaning. So I'll kind of start with that. So this 93 starts getting into the Ekadasha Skandam of Bhagavatam, where there's a conversation that is happening between Krishna and Uddhava. right? And it all starts literally with Krishna deciding to depart. And at that time, Uddhava gets a chance to meet with Krishna before Krishna decides to depart Earth. And Uddhava says that, like, look, I've been your truest and closest of friends. So I want to come along with you. First, he says, Krishna, don't go. But Krishna says, I have to go. My time is up. But then he says, okay, take me along, right? So Krishna says, no, Uddhava, I'm going for a reason, but you have to stay back for some other reasons, right? So Krishna tells Uddhava, but he says, your liberation is guaranteed. He says, Uddhava, you have done all the right things. You are definitely going to get liberated and you're going to come and join me. But then somebody has to stay back to carry on my work, right? So Krishna then tells Uddhava to stay back. This is a conversation that goes on between Krishna and Uddhava, where Krishna then tells Uddhava that, he gives a lot of context, which is called the Uddhava Gita, right? Which is what we're going to see a lot of these things which are going to come later in the next several chapters. But Krishna, he kind of starts out by saying that everything that we are seeing in this material universe that we are seeing, it appears as certain things for our eyes, it feels certain things, but under the skin, under the hood of it, it is everything is the same Paramatma, which is existing in every what we call as a Paramanu, which is the smallest indivisible particle which is there. So all the way from there, the Paramanu is the smallest particle, which then adds up to create everything that we are seeing in this material world. This is even in that Paramanu, there is a Bhagavan. And there's nothing in the world that there's no Bhagavan inside of it. So even the laptop screen, the mouse, the keyboard, everything which has got some level of energy has got Bhagavan in it, right? So he explains that it is like that. But when it takes on different shapes, it appears like different things to us. And then we start treating it differently without realizing that at the end of the day, it's the same Bhagavan which is in everything else. And the example Krishna also gives in this says is, let's say two people are dating, and the guy, he still loves that one girl, but the girl could wear different clothes, wear different makeup every day. But if he truly loves that girl, it doesn't matter to him what she's wearing or what makeup she's wearing, right? He looks past it, looks past the outer appearance and looks at the girl. Similarly, he says you have to learn to recognize it, and that is important because later on we are going to see about how we perceive duality in everything, right? And the only way to get over the duality is to realize is the same Bhagavan which is there, everything there. Anyway, that is the first part. Second, he says is you have to get all of your senses under control, especially your mind, right? And then he says you go about recognizing that it's the same me who is there in everybody else. So that it kind of starts off with that. And here Bhattadripat is saying he says that it is only with your grace, Tava Karunaya, it's only with your grace, Krishna, I am going to be able to give all this attachment I have, because we all have attachment to people, we have attachment to a lot of things. And Bhattadripat starts off by saying, Bandhu Sneham Vijahya. He says, I want to give up this tight attachment I have towards my family members and towards my friends. He says, because that is what is preventing me from moving forward, right? Because what happens is something keeps holding us back towards everything else, right? He says, get me the opportunity to overcome this because I'm getting so attached to it that I'm not able to move forward with myself, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So anyway, he says, I want to renounce everything. And then I want to wander through this universe, wander through this earth with always my attention focused on you, and then not seeing this duality between things and always seeing you, Krishna, in everything that I'm actually seeing. So that is the first prayer that Bhattadripat starts off with. Then he kind of second one, he talks, like you all know this. It's called as the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It says a very basic, you have basic survival thing that everybody fights about, cycle, the physiological needs, right? You need air to survive, you need water, food. So those kind of becomes the base of the pyramid. And then you all have to survive. So there's a survival instinct that kicks in. And then there's a love and all that. Eventually, once you attained everything, then people start thinking about, okay, I have everything I need, right? But I don't have inner peace. I don't have inner satisfaction. Let me go towards it, right? That's a hierarchy of needs. So he says, similarly, there are creatures in this world, including the smallest of vegetation, has a level of consciousness. However, that level of consciousness is very, very low, which is in the plants. And then you think of the animals which are purely surviving on instinct. They do not have the level of discrimination, intellect that we have. And even within animals, there are multiple levels. Anyway, so you kind of graduate through all of these things, and finally, you have gotten a human life. And in that human life, you have the ability to discriminate what is good, what is right. You have this concept of choice, which an animal life does not have. So he says, this particular life which I've got, you know, I'm trying to see that, which is that Janir Durlabaha, which is so hard to get such a human life. But what is the biggest enemy for the human life to advance? He says it's not our friends, not our spouse, not anybody else. He says the biggest enemy is our own mind. So Bhattacharya says here that, if we have to get our mind under control, if your mind is your best friend, it will take you all in the right direction. If your mind ends up not being your best friend, it will take you into all of the distractions. He says, please bless me so that I can get my mind under control, because that mind has to lead me in the right path. And I stop blaming others for me not leading a proper life, right? But blaming others for why you are not progressing spiritually or whatever, it is really your mind that is the reason. So anyway, those are the first two things which start, which is kind of setting the stage for the rest of the 8, 9 stanzas, right? Okay, so we'll get into stanza 3. त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इव न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न हि चलति ततः सक्षमां शिक्षहेयं गृह्णीयामीश तत्तद्विषयपरिचयेऽप्यप्रसक्तिं समीरात् व्याप्तत्वञ्चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपता च. So here Krishna, the hierarchy, the way it goes is Krishna is telling Uddhava about a conversation which is happening between a king called Yadu and a Brahmana. So the king is going and asking the Brahmana. A Brahmana means they're supposed to do certain religious activities and all of those things all the time. But he says, the king Yadu is asking the Brahmana, but I don't see you doing that, oh Brahmana. But you still seem to be leading a very contented life, a very self-contained life. You have all your senses under control, but you don't be seems to be doing any of the religious activities. How is that, right? You don't seem to be praying also. How is that? So the Brahmana says, I don't need to look out. I don't need to pray and do all these activities to get my senses and my mind under control. What is existing in nature is actually my guru. And then he goes on to actually describe 24 gurus which he is actually seeing in nature. He says from each one, that's what we're going to go through each of this, but this title is 25 gurus. So I'll tell you what the 25th guru is later. So the 24 gurus, he says, are what I'm seeing in nature, and from that, I'm able to observe certain things. Then he starts describing what those are. So first one, in this case, in this stanza, there are 3 gurus described. The first one is anything which is nature, like earth, trees, mountains. You kind of put them in one category. He says that what we can learn from them is a mountain has dedicated its life only for servicing others. From mountains, streams come. Within mountains, there are caves for people to actually take shelter. There are trees which grow, and from trees, the fruits come. Does the tree ever come and ask you even once, you are taking this fruit away from me, what are you giving me back? The tree never asks. The tree is always a giving tree. It doesn't matter. You could chop the tree, you could beat the tree, but if the tree exists, its duty is to give it to others. He says that is what I'm learning on the tree, is to be always be able to give to others without expecting anything in return and not asking what they are giving to me. The earth, he says we jump on the earth, we walk on the earth, and the earth is so forbearing. The earth doesn't respond back like Newton's third law, that because Rajesh jumped on me, I'm going to give him I'm going to just displace him. It absorbs it, right? It doesn't retaliate too much, right? So that is what he says. Those are the things I'm learning from the earth, the trees, and the mountains, which is the first guru. The second guru in this case is Vayu, wind. So when the wind is going over something which is smelling good, yes, it carries that fragrance for a certain distance. When it is going through something that is bad, it carries it, but it doesn't hold on to it. It doesn't attach the fragrance or the aroma to the wind permanently, right? It carries it for some distance, it lets it go, right? So that is, I say, that is what I'm learning. I'm learning this non-attachment from wind is not to exactly mix into anything which is good or mix into anything that is bad, but just remain at a distance. You might have some influence of it, but not have a continuous influence of it all the time that you're carrying it on. The wind doesn't carry, the wind doesn't, it just doesn't mix. It just, the aroma goes, the aroma stops. And then the wind is going on its own path. As the second one. The third one is the sky. So when you kind of look at the sky, you see the sky is there everywhere, right? And however, it looks like the sky is there everywhere, and the sky doesn't mix with anything either. So he says these are like the pancha bhutas who are there, which are existing inside of me, inside of all of us. At the same time, these pancha bhutas can exist independent of me. If none of us exist tomorrow, earth is still going to be there, air is still going to be there, water is still going to be there, but they all also exist inside of us for survival, right? For us to survive. So he says what I'm learning from this is the Paramatma who is there exists inside each one of us, without whom we cannot survive. But the Paramatma can exist independent of us. Tomorrow if none of us exist, the Paramatma will still exist, and it's there everywhere, just like how the sky pervades through the entire earth. Anywhere you go, you can see the sky. He says that's what I'm learning from the sky. So those are the three gurus he's actually calling out in this, as to what we can learn. Okay, so let's get into
Rajeshri, second one என்னது?
Second one was wind. Wind.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ritiji, you can be student, and Gayatri Ramesha, Shashi Rekava, Ramesh in போட்டிருக்கேன்.
Oh, sorry, this is Gayatri Ramesh.
Okay, you can be student. Yeah. त्वत् कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते ka iva nahi guruhu. Put a visarga comma guruhu. Then on top of the loka there is a ir that will go away. Loka vrittepi bhuman sarva krantapi bhumir nahi chalati tataha. So that is, that is there. Remove it, visarga comma tataha. Satshamam shikshayeyam. त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इव न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न हि चलति ततः सक्षमां शिक्षयेयम्.
त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इह न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न हि चलति ततः तत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम्. त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इव न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न हि चलति ततः तत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम्.
त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते कैव न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न चलति ततः सक्षमां शिक्षयेयम्. त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते कैव न हि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्न चलति ततः सत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम्.
गृह्णीयाम् ईश comma tat tad विषय परिचयेप्य प्रसक्तिं समीरात् comma व्याप्तत् वंचात्मनो में in sound व्याप्तत् वंचात्मनो में comma गगन गुरु वशात् भातु निर्लेपता च. गृह्णीयामीश तत्तद् विषय परिचयेप्य प्रसक्तिं समीरात् व्याप्तद् वंचात्मनो मे गगन गुरु वशात् भातु निर्लेपता च.
Rajesh, last line, Vyaptatvam, right?
No, Vyaptat Vanchatmano. It's not Tvam there, no.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, Vyaptat, no, it's a im. You're right, it's im, but it becomes a in because of the cha coming. So that's why my book has already made it a in there. So vyaptan vanchatmano me.
Okay. Those two words are together, right?
Yeah, vyaptatvan, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. गृह्णीयामीश तत्त्वद्विषयपरिचयेऽप्य प्रसक्तिं समीरात व्याप्तं चात्मनो मे
Oh,
गगनगुरु
finish. Sorry, finish.
uh,
That word is vyaptatvan.
व्याप्तत्वम् ओके व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु मे निर्लेपता च गृह्णीयामीश तत्तद्विषयपरिचयेऽप्य प्रसक्तिं समीरात व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपता च
गृह्णीयामीश तत्तत् परिचयेप्य प्रशक्तिं समीराध व्याप्तत्वञ्चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशाद् भाधु मे निर्लपेत
Nirlepata cha.
निर्लेपता च गृह्णीयामीश गृह्णीयामीश तद्धत् परिचयेभ्य प्रशक्तिं समीराध व्याप्तत्वञ्चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशाद् भाधु निर्लेपता च
Hands up. Swachhasyam pavanoham madura udakavat vannivanmasma grinham sarvan hinopi dosham tarushutameva mam sarva bhuteshvaveyam pushtirnashtakkalanam shashina ivatanoho natmanostiti vidyam toya divyastamartandavadapi cha tanushvekatam tvatprasadhat. The fourth guru is water, like fresh water, right? So when you think of the water which is coming from the fresh glaciers, and when the water is coming, it is saying it is first of all, it is free from all contamination, or even rainwater. If you think of it, it is free from all contamination. It is pure, right? And then it is very gentle by nature. It's very relaxing, peaceful, and when you get in contact with it, it creates positive vibrations to you, the water. So he says that is how the greatest devotees of Bhagavan are. They are not tainted by all of the external material things, and they are gentle by nature. And coming in contact with them also raises your consciousness, raises your vibrations, right? So he says, may I also, it's like a prayer, and may I also be like that water, unlike your greatest devotees, who's spreading positive vibrations, who's gentle, and all of the calming nature or calming properties of that. That is the fourth. The fifth one is fire, Agni. So one of the biggest challenges we have is we cannot control our tongue, right? In terms of eating, we all love to eat, we all love to taste different kinds of food. But the sages, the greatest of sages, they don't go looking for food. Whatever comes their way, they are eating. Just like how whatever you offer into Agni, into fire, it burns. Agni doesn't care if you're putting curd rice or you're putting dal rice or chapati, whatever you put, it's going to burn, right? He says, similarly, like the greatest of sages, like how Agni is, give me the capacity that whatever food comes my way, I will eat it. I'm not going to get attached to food, and I'm not going to go and looking for food. That is one part of the Agni thing. The second part of the Agni is inside every wood, there is Agni inside, because it has got the property to catch fire. So, but when you look at it, when you look at a wood, you don't say there is fire inside the wood. But when the wood comes in contact with the fire, it's going to catch fire. Just similarly, it doesn't look like there is a Paramatma sitting inside all of us, but there is a Paramatma sitting inside all of us. That is the understanding we have to come. So that is with fire. Then the third one is moon. So the moon doesn't change shape, right? But the Krishna Paksha and Shukla Paksha, the waxing and the waning of the moon, gives us an illusion that the moon is actually becoming smaller, the moon is actually becoming bigger. But the moon doesn't change itself. He says that is how this body is, which we have to realize that the soul inside the body doesn't age. It always remains intact. It doesn't change at all. It's the body that we have, which is covering the soul, which is undergoing this level of, becoming old and becoming young, or all that stuff is all the birth and the death is all happening for the body and not for the soul. That's a lesson I'm learning from the moon. The fourth one is the sun. Again, all of this is again tying to the Paramatma only. So the sun, when we look at it, when you look at the sun in a river, the sun is reflecting in one way in the river. You look at your window, when the sunlight is falling on your window, the sun is reflecting in one way. So similarly, when the sun is reflecting in your sunglasses, the sun might look different. So just because the sun looks different and getting reflected in different ways in all these different things, the sun still remains the same. So very similar to the moon, it says. Similarly, the soul, at the end of the day, you could be a Hindu, you could be a Christian, you could be American, you could be any particular, gender, doesn't matter. It says the soul is always the same kind of soul which is existing inside everybody. Connected to the Paramatma, it's just the outer appearance appears different because of the different bodies they have all taken. So anyway, that is the lesson from water, fire, sun, and the moon in this case. So Swachah put is Swachasyam Pavanoham, Madhura Udaka Vad Vanni Vanma Sma Grinnam, Sarva Ninopi Dosham, Tarushu Tamiva Mam, Sarva Bhuteshva Veyam. I think Ritiji got dropped. Okay. Mithulaji, you can just fill for her until she comes back. Swachhasyam pavanoham madhura udakavat vannivanmasma grinham sarvan hinopi dosham tarushu tamiva mam sarva bhuteshva veyam.
Swachhasyam pavanoham madhura udakavadvagnivatmasma grihnam sarvaninopi dosham tarushu tamimam sarvabhuteshvaveyam. Swachhasyam pavanoham madhura udagavadvagnivatmasma grihnam sarvaninopi dosham tarushutamimam sarvabhuteshvaveyam.
Swachhasyam Pavanoham Madhura Udagavat Vagni Vanmasma Grignam Sarvanino Pitosham Drushun Tamiva Mam Sarvabhuteshu Veyam.
Sarvabhuteshva veyam.
Sarvabhuteshva Veyam. Swachhasyam Pavanoham Mathura Udakavat Vagni Vanmasma Grignam Sarvanino Pitosham Tarushutamam Tamimivamam Sarva Bhuteshva Veyam. And this first இது வந்து Swachhasyam கரெக்டா அது
Swachhasyam.
Okay, சரி. Thank you.
Pushtir Nashtihi, put a ih sound, Nashtih Kalanam Shashina Iva Thanoho, put a visarga comma, Thanoho. Next, in terms of Natmano, there is a ir that will go away. Natmano stiti vidyam, comma, Toyadi Vyasta Martanda Vadapicha, comma, Tanushvekatam Twat Prasadat. Pushtirnashtikkalanham shashina ivatanoho natmanosthiti vidyam tohya divyastamartandavadapicha tanushvekatam tvat prasadat.
Pushtirnashtikkalanam shashina ivatanoho natmanosthiti vidyam te toya divyastamartandavadapicha tanushvekatam tvatprasadat. Pushtirnashti kalanam shashina iva tanoho natmanosthi vidyam toya divyastamartandavadapicha tanushvekatam tvatprasadat.
पुष्टिर्नष्टिकलानां शशिनैव तनोः नात्मनोऽस्तीति विद्यां तोयादिव्यस्तमार्ताण्डवदपि च तनुष्वेगतां त्वत्प्रसादात् पुष्टिर्नष्टिकलानां शशिनैव तनोः नात्मनोऽस्तीति विद्यां तोयादिव्यस्तमार्ताण्डवदपि च तनुष्वेकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्.
That's a fact. स्नेहाद् व्याधात पुत्र प्रणय मृतकपोतायितो मास्म भुवं प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सहेयक्षुतमपि शयुवत् सिन्धुवत् स्यामघादः मापप्तं योषिधादौ शिखिनिशलभवत् भृङ्गवत् सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु तद्वद्धनचयनवशान्माहमीश प्रणेशम्. Talking about 5 gurus in this. So first it starts with the pigeon. So the pigeon, it talks about, and this is a very long topic, so I won't get into it. I'll just touch the surface of it. It says a pigeon, one of the male pigeons was so attached to the female pigeon and so attached to the baby pigeon that all it was doing was just focusing on protecting them and caring for them. And one day the hunter comes and takes away all the wife and the baby pigeons. And what happens to this male pigeon, this context of the human life, is they spend the entire life getting attached to the family and not doing anything else. And one day the family just goes away. And then this person realized that where am I right now, right? And this is, again, like I said, it's a very long topic, right, of what you need to do and all that, which I won't get into right now. But at the end of the day, is everybody is coming in with a very clear what's the birth and what is going to be that you cannot change it. No matter what, you cannot change it, right? So you see, it's very important that you realize that you allocate time for your self-development. Otherwise, life will pass by doing all the other things that you are doing for all the dependents. And one day, it's going to be your day, like we saw with Ajamila, and then you have not made any progress, right? That's what it is telling really with the example of a pigeon. The second one is that of a python. We spoke about the food because the food is extremely important to get our senses under control. He says the python is lying in a place. The python never goes looking for food. It's lying in its place. And if a deer comes, it swallows the deer. Whatever comes its way, it is going to eat. If it doesn't get any food, it actually goes for several days without eating. Similarly, he says, if you do not get food on a given day, or you go to some restaurant and the food you get, you don't like it. He says you should accept it as that is what God's intention for me today is, and not get too much attached to it, because he says that is one of the things to get your mind under control, is to accept things for what they are, saying this is what God intended for me to eat today or not eat today. That is from the python. The third one he talks about here is around the ocean. So it says about in a rainy season, a lot of the rivers get flooded and reach into the ocean. In summertime, the rivers may parch up, may dry up, and not enough water is going into the ocean. But he says when you look at the ocean doesn't dry up during summer, right? The ocean still always remains full, no matter if it is winter or no matter if it is summer or rainy season. He says similarly, very similar to the food example, it says, as a true devotee, your mind should be like an ocean, always remaining the same in good times and in bad times, whether something is not working or something is working as well. That is the one. The next, he talks about the moth. And the moth, it's explained in the context of like an attraction to the opposite gender. It could be a male, it could be a female, right? Saying that if you do not keep your senses under control, it is very easy to actually get attracted and sucked into a relationship with the opposite gender because you're not able to control your senses. And he says that if you're not able to control your senses, it is like a moth which is actually walking into a flame and then burning itself. That's what is going to happen. Now, this doesn't mean that you should not be in a relationship or any of that stuff. It says you should have your senses under your control and not easily fall right? Fall for various attractions and everything. And the last one here is around honeybee. And the honeybee, it's just like, it talks about one more honeybee example is going to come later. But in the sense, here it talks about, like a honeybee which is collecting all the honey, okay? And then what happens is it is saving all this honey, and then somebody else comes and takes all the honey and go away. So it's just similarly, just realize that all this wealth that you're accumulating, if it is not put to good use, if it is not put towards charity and all the good uses of the wealth, tomorrow that wealth may not even be with you. So don't think you can save all this wealth and use it for something tomorrow. Put your wealth to good use today by doing charity and all the other things, because without your knowledge, all this wealth may go away. That is what he's learning from the honeybee.
The second one, pigeon was one. Second one,
python, snake.
Python.
Yeah.
Rajesh, what is the Sanskrit word for python in these lines?
1 second, wait. Shayuvat. Shudamapi Shayuvat.
Thank you.
Snehat Vyadhat Putra Pranaya Mrita Kapothayito Ma Sma Bhuvam. So that line is continuous, comma.
Rajesh ji,
Ah.
Vyasana Mritan irke bookla. Adu tappa.
Okay, can you just change it to Pranaya? I don't know what Vyasana difference ennan therilla. Change it to
Yeah.
Pranaya.
Rajesh, why maatanga? Why not any other thing?
I mean, that's the example he picked. It could be
Okay.
anything else which is walking into a fire,
Like, like we can get that honeybee, right? Like how the honeybee gets everything together. Don't get anything together, apdi and the madri.
Yeah, the moth
You
would
can
example.
relate that very well, but moth
The moth is like the moth is. It says so if you think of it as so many examples of even Ajamila that we spoke. He had his senses under control. He saw a prostitute. He fell for her. His entire life turned south from there, right? Because
Yeah.
at that time he was not able to control his senses. Even though he knew it was wrong, it's like you walk straight into the truck, right? Like they say, or so this is the deer walking into the headlights, right? So it's just similarly, the moth is walking into the fire. At that time, the moth knows it is not a right thing to do, but it still ends up doing it, and it ends up burning as a result of that, right? That is the comparison example that's given.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can use anything else for as an example too. But the idea being that you don't control your senses, you're going to walk into traps. And you walk into a trap, then you're going to get sucked into the trap and not come out of it. That is the takeaway, right? It could be any example of something which is doing that.
Can you go back to the first two lines, 3P?
Yeah. Snehat Vyadhat Putra Pranaya.
Vyada istan போட்டிருக்கீங்க அதுல. Vyadas tattava. Vyadhatha. Okay.
Vyadhatha Putra Pranaya Mrita Kapothayito Ma Sma Bhuvam, comma, Praptam Prashnan Saheya Kshudamapi Shayuvat, comma, Sindhuvat Syamagadaha. Sindhu here referring to the ocean there. Snehat Vyadhata Putra Pranayamrita Kapota Yito Masma Bhuvam Praptam Prashnan Saheya Kshudamapi Shayuvat Sindhuvat Syamaghadaha.
I see Rati is back.
Vijaya, go ahead.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I cannot open my video.
That's okay. Go ahead, Vijaya.
Snehat Vyathat Putra Pranayamrita Tayito Masma Bhuvam Praptam Prashnan Saheya Kshutamapi Sayuvat Sindhuvat Syamagatha Snehat Vyathat Putra Pranayamrita Tayito Masma Bhuvam Praptam Prashnan Saheya Kshutamapi Sayuvat Sindhuvat Syamagatha.
Sneghadyadastaputra pranayamrita kapodayito masma भुवं प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सखेयशुधमपि सयुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगातः स्नेहात् व्यादास्तपुत्र प्रणयमृतकपोदायितो मास्म भुवं प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सखेय शुधमपि सयुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगातः
मा पप्तं योषिधादौ शिखिनि shalabhavat, comma, shalabhavat referring to the moth here. Shikini shalabhavat referring to the moth entering the fire, comma. Bhringa vatsara bhagi bhuyasam. So put a plus at the end of that line and after bhuyasam, comma. After shalabhavat, one comma. After bhuyasam, one comma. Kintu tad vad dhana chayana vashan mahamisha pranesham. Ma paptam yoshidhadau shikhini shalabhavat भृंगवत् सारभागी भूयासं किंतु तद्वद् धनचयन वशान् माहमीश प्रणेशम्.
मा पप्तं योषिदादौ शिखिनि शलभवत् भृङ्गवत् सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु Rajesh, how do I split that?
Yeah. Kintu tadvad dhanachayana.
Tadvad. Okay. मा पप्तं योषिदादौ शिखिनि शलभवत् भृङ्गवत् सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु तद्वदचयनवशान् माहमीश प्रणेशम्.
So that teaches that, but kintu tadvad. Tadvad. It's like a dwa sound there. Tadvad. Okay.
Thana, right? Tadvadhana.
Tadvad dhana chayana.
Dhana chayana. Okay.
Dhana wealth. Dhana chayana.
मा पप्तं योषिदादौ शिखिनि शलभवत् भृङ्गवत् सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु तद्वद् धनचयनवशान् माहमीश प्रणेशम्.
मा पप्तं योषिधादौ शिगिनशुलभवत् भृङ्गवत्सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु तद्वत् धनशयनवशान् माहमीश प्रणेशम्. मा पप्तं योषिधादौ शिगिनशुलभवत् भृङ्गवत्सारभागी सारभागी भूयासं किन्तु तद्वत् धनशयनवशान् माहमीश प्रणेशम्.
That's 6. Ma bhadyasam tarunya gaja iva vashaya narjayehyam dhanaukam hartanyastam himadvi hara iva mrigavanmamuham gramya geetaihi natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva balishe pingalavan nirasha supyam bhartavya yogat kurara iva vibho samishonyairna hanyei. And I will send you all like a quick summary of this later, so you don't have to worry, in terms of remembering it. So in this, there are like 6 gurus he talks about. So one of them is like elephant, which is very similar to like the moth example we saw, where he says, like an elephant when it tries to woo a she elephant, it gets into battle with other bull male elephants who don't want this person to come. And this elephant gets destroyed in the process, right? And I don't know much about elephants, but that's the example they're giving. So he says, similarly, don't get your senses under control is the key takeaway, right? Don't fall too much for other things and learn to keep your senses under control. That's the first. There's a honey gatherer. So the previous example I said of the honey bee was slightly different. I said it wrong because it applies to the honey gatherers. So in the previous example, when we said that the bee is going from hive to hive, collecting the honey, and what it does is it ends up accumulating so much honey that it then doesn't use it. So that was a previous example to say don't accumulate so much wealth that you have no value for it, right? You die and then you have $10 million left, right? Which is of no use. So he says don't try to understand what is important and how much is important. That is the previous example. Here is what he talks about the honey gatherers, which he says that the honeybee goes and accumulates all this honey, but the honey gatherer comes and takes everything, and they never put the honey to good use, which is the charity example I was giving earlier to say that, if you have all this money, learn to use it properly, because it's all going to just probably disappear one day, like what had happened in the market where it fell 10%, right, in 2 days, and then the 401k got wiped out. So he says similarly, just be careful because you don't know what's going to happen to your money. The third one is around the deer. So the deer, the example is calling him as Gramya Geetaihi. So which means there is like a certain melody or a certain kind of sound, music, which when you play, it attracts the deer. And the deer comes running after this melody, running after this music, and eventually the hunter captures it. So similarly, it says, even the music you hear, this is what the sage is telling, even the music you hear should be such a music that it gets you closer to God and not takes you in an opposite direction. Like we all know how music can influence our minds and thoughts. So it talks about listening to the right music, because that will take you in the wrong direction if you don't listen to the right music. The next is the fish he talks about. So the fish example here, it is like a balishe. It's like we have a fish bait, right? And what is the bait? The bait is a food for the fish. So the fish doesn't recognize between the food and the bait. So he says similarly, in your life, you'll have a lot of these things which seem like bait situations. And you need to be mindful of not catching on to the bait, because you know what's going to happen if you get onto the bait. So that's what I'm learning from the fish, to be able to discriminate various situations, to understand what is a bait, which is what is real, right? And so before making a decision, think through that. That is from the fish. Then there's an example of this lady called as a prostitute called Pingala. So this Pingala, she used to be always waiting in her doorway, waiting for customers to come. That was her profession, right? She was a prostitute. So one day, she just waited for several hours, and she was doing everything possible to get a customer, and nobody would stop at her place. Nobody would come to her. So at some point in her life, a realization stuck, saying that, why am I doing all these things, right? For what? Why am I putting down myself so much to earn money or for whatever purpose? That realization finally came to her. So the reason for that was because she felt she was getting too attached to money, because of which she was doing whatever it took, right? He says similarly, for us, the example he's giving comparing to this Pingala is, at some point, you have to take a step back and realize whether what you are doing, are you doing the right thing? And is it really worth the effort, right? A lot of people go through the realization, which is what this Pingala had to go through. That is the example he's giving here. Then the second one is a kurara bird. It's a type of bird, meat-eating bird. So there is one kurara bird which was having a piece of meat in its mouth. And then all these other kurara birds were chasing this kurara bird. And this kurara bird was feeling stressful because everybody's chasing it, and they're probably going to bite this bird or hurt this bird. Then the kurara bird realized they are all coming for this piece of meat that I'm having in my mouth. If I renounce that piece of meat which I'm having, these people are going to stop bothering me. I can be peaceful. So what the kurara bird does, the meat which it gathered, it just drops it on the ground. So all these other kurara birds end up going and eating this meat. They are all fighting now for that one piece of meat. And this kurara bird is sitting and observing. He says similarly, in your life, you should learn not to get too attached to things. Sometimes letting go of things, whether it be physical things or mental things, just letting it go is going to give you a lot of peace of mind, like the kurara bird went through. Okay, all right. Let's just switch, because this is pretty meaning intensive chapter. So we'll not be able to finish this. But okay, Ritiji, you can do one half of it, and then I'll switch to Mridula ji. And then Sashirika, you can be a student. Ma bhadyasam tarunya gaja iva vashaya, narjayeyam dhanaugam, hartan yastam hi madvi hara iva, mrigavanma muham gramya geetaihi. मा भद्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माद्वीहर इव मृगवन्मामुखं ग्राम्यगीतैः
मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हर इव मृगवन्मामुखं ग्राम्यगीतैः मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हर इव मृगवन्मामुखं ग्राम्यगीतैः
मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हर इव मृगवन्मामुखं ग्राम्यगीतैः मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हर इव मृगवन्मामुखं ग्राम्यगीतैः
नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जश इव बलिशे pingala one nirashah, put is and then join with the next line, pingala one nirashas supyam bhartavya yogat, then a comma, kurara iva vibho samishonyair na hanyai. नाथ्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जश इव भलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्न हन्यै.
नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये झष इव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्न हन्यै नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये झष इव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्न हन्यै
नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जश इव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुभ्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यै न हन्यै नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जश इव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुभ्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यै न हन्यै
ராஜேஷ்ஜி படிஷேன்னு இருக்கு என்னோட புக்ல பலின்னு எழுதிக்கணுமா
बलिशे
படி
बालिशे बलिशे
ஓகே
वर्तेय त्यक्तमानः सुखमतिशिशुवन्निस्सहायश्चरेयं कन्याया एकशेषो वलय इव विभो वर्जितान्योन्यघोषः त्वच्चित्तो नावबुद्धे परमिषु कृति वक्ष्मामृदायानघोषं गेहेष्वन्यप्रणीतेषु अहिरिव निवसान्युन्दयोर्मन्दिरेषु. Next talks about Shishu, first a child. So we know how, a child, when a small child is there, it doesn't care much about what people think. It does what it wants. No, doesn't mean you can go do what you want, but as long as you're doing the right thing, it is do not worry about how people interpret it. Do not worry about how the world, because tomorrow's people minds, viewpoints may change. So you cannot give up on your principles. That is what he's referring to here. Not doesn't mean that you can do all kinds of things, not worrying about what people are thinking. So that is the takeaway from a child, is ignoring outside thing as long as you are doing what is right. Right. And the second one is about a young girl, Kanyaya Ekashesho Valay. So talks about a story, like a bunch of people end up coming to one girl's house for dinner one night. There's no food. She's the only one at home. So she goes inside the kitchen and she starts breaking rice. She is wearing too many bangles. So when she's wearing bangles and she's breaking this, people can hear the noise, right? Outside of the bangles mixing with each other. She doesn't want them to know she's cooking. So what she does is she removes all her bangles. And she has two bangles, one in each hand. Even then, when she's husking that rice, the two bangles are rubbing against each other and making noise. She finally removes even one of the bangle and she has only one bangle in her hand. And when she does it, they cannot hear the noise. So he's taking that example to say when you're in a group, there's always bound to be arguments, always bound to be, conversations which are going to result in bad. Even when you are just two people living in your house, there are bound to be arguments and bound to be disagreements. He says, be like that girl with one bangle. So as much I'm just saying what he's saying here. Okay, he says, be like the girl with one bangle on your own, because then you are not getting interrupted and getting into unnecessary arguments and distractions with people, and you can focus on what is important for you on the religious side, right? So that is on the Kanyaya Ekasheshe Vale example. Then the third one here is talking about an arrow maker, a person who makes arrows for the king. He's so focused on his work that he doesn't even see the king coming. So he says, similarly, he says, my mind should be absorbed in you, Guru Ayappa, so much that any other distractions that are coming, I should not get distracted when I'm praying to you, right? So it doesn't matter what somebody is ringing the bell or somebody is calling or somebody is talking in the background, remain focused on your prayers when you're doing that. That is the one. The fourth one, again, the snake comes back. Now, not in the context of food, but the snake does not build its own house. The snake goes into whatever house is available because it doesn't possess anything of its own. He says, similarly, don't build up too many possessions, is the takeaway, and go, just like you eat what comes your way, go stay wherever it is available. Like I'm talking about sannyasis and that level, right? Where they just go stay wherever they're available. They don't go pick and choose. That is the takeaway from the snake here. So, Varteya Tyaktamaanaha, Sukhamati Shishu Van Nissahayash Chareyam, Kanyaya Ekashesho Balaya Iva Vibho, Varjitanyonya Ghoshaha. Dilaji, you can take over now. Varteyatyaktamanah Sukhamati Shishuvan Nissahayascharehyam Kanyaya Ekashesho Valaya Iva Vibho Varjitanyonya Ghoshaha.
I do have a question, Rajesh. The second line, Kanyaya Eta Shesho. Is it Eka or Eto?
Eka, one.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm continuing, right, Rajesh?
Mithila ji is doing it. I think she did one for you, so I just swapped one. So, yeah.
Varteyatyaktamanah Sukhamati Shishuvan Nissahayascharehyam Kanyaya Ekashesho Valaya Iva Vibho Varjitanyona Ghoshaha. Varteyatyaktamanah Sukhamati Shishuvan Nissahayascharehyam Kanyaya Ekashesho Valaya Iva Vibho Varjitanyonya Ghoshaha.
Varteyatyaktamanah Sukhamati Vannissahayascharehyam Kanyaya Ekashesho Valaya Iva Vibho Varjitanyonya Ghoshaha. Varteyatyaktamanah Sukhamati Vannissahayascharehyam Kanyaya Ekashesho Valaya Iva Vibho Varjitanyonya Ghoshaha.
Tvach Chitto Nava Bhudyai, Paramishu Kridiva Kshma Bhridayana Gosham. So not a full Ksha. Kshma Bhridayana Gosham, Geheshvanya Praniteshu. So the ish and a va that you have there, you're going to break it. You're going to put a shu. So Geheshvanya Praniteshu, next word starts with the a. Ahiriva Nivasan Yundaror Mandireshu. Short u. Tvachitto Navabudhyai Paramishu Kridiva Kshmabhridayana Ghosham Geheshvanya Praniteshu Ahiriva Nivasan Yundaror Mandireshu.
I have another question.
Yep.
The last line, is it Nyunduror or Nyundaror?
It's Nivasan Yunduror.
Yunduru. Thank you. Tvachitto nava buddhyai paramishu kridiva shmabridayana kosham geheshwanya praniteshu ahiriva nivasanyunduror mandireshu. Tvachitto nava buddhyai paramishu kridiva shmabridayana kosham griheshwanya praniteshu ahiriva nivasa nyunduror mandireshu.
Rajesh, third line வந்து கேஹேஷ் தானே
Yeah,
கேஹே
the fourth line. And the Gehesh. I think you said
Gehesh.
Grey mythology there. Second time.
Geheshwanya, right?
Yeah. Geha
Thank
as in house. Yeah.
Thank you.
त्वच्चित्तो नावबुद्ध्यै परमेषु कृतिवक्ष्माभृदायानघोषं गेहेष्वन्यप्रणितेषु अहिरिव निवसान् युन्दुरोर्मन्दिरेषु त्वच्चित्तो नावबुद्ध्यै परमेषु कृतिवक्ष्माभृदायानघोषं गेहेष्वन्यप्रणितेषु अहिरिव निवसान् युन्दुरोर्मन्दिरेषु.
That's it. त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदित्यूर्णनाभात् प्रतीयां त्वच्चिन्ता त्वत्स्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात् बिड्भस्मात्माश्वदेहो भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं धत्ते सञ्चिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्. So here he first talks about a spider. He says, just like how a spider, from its own body, it generates all the things necessary for the web to be created. And when it is done, it can consume all of this web back into its body if you let it before we go wipe it off. So he says, similarly, that is one of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam that Bhagavan said to Brahma is every single thing that is in this material world, and we saw it in Dashakam 5, 6, and all, if you remember, it came out of me, Bhagavan, and eventually it is all going to come back into me. So always realize that. That is a lesson. And the spider is teaching us of how Bhagavan created this world. The second is a beetle, Beetle. And I don't know too much about this, but maybe if anybody is an expert here, they can tell. So it says the beetle brings, when the worm is small, it brings it to its nest and constantly is knocking on the edge of the nest, right? And this worm, being worried that the beetle is going to eat it without knowing it, keeps thinking about the beetle and takes the form of the beetle eventually when the worm is in a small stage. So he says, and I don't know how that works, but the example, his parallel thing he's giving is you become what you are constantly thinking of, right? And so if you're constantly thinking of Bhagavan, then you will attain Sayujyam with Bhagavan itself. So that is what he's saying. Get your mind, body, actions all always focused towards that Bhagavan. Then naturally you will also become that, like that Bhagavan, like how Uddhava attained, right? He attained union because he was always with Krishna, always thinking about Krishna, always doing what Krishna likes, and then he attained that union. So that is the example of the beetle here. And the third one, then so this, when you add all that we spoke about, and I'll send you a list later after the class today, it adds to 24 gurus. But we said the title here is 25 gurus, right? Here Bhattatripad is saying those are the 24 gurus that that the king heard from the Brahmana. Let me tell you about a 25th guru from my experience. He says this body is the 25th guru, because he says this body is a great teacher, and that goes on into the next stanza also. It says this body is a great teacher for me because it suffers so many problems, so many diseases, so many, I've been having a sore throat for 1 week, right? And the lesson you have to learn from this is to say that when the body is functioning, to put it to good use. You cannot control what happens all the time. You can do your best, but things are going to happen. So when the body is in good shape, you have to put it to good use, right? And because when the body starts draining out, a lot of the things you cannot do. So that's where the body becomes the 25th guru here, your own body. Tvayeva tvat kritam tvam, comma, Kshapayasi Jagadit Yurna Nabhat. So you cannot break that word. Jagadit Yurna Nabhat Pratiyam, comma. Twach Chinta Twat Swarupam Kuruta iti, comma. Dhridam Shikshaye Peshakarat. त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदिद्यूर्णनाभात् प्रतीयां त्वच्चिन्ता त्वत्स्वरूपं कुरुत इति then comma त्वच्चिन्ता त्वत्स्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात्
त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदित्यूर्णनापात् प्रतीयां त्वच्छिन्दात्वस्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात् त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदित्यूर्णनाभात् प्रतीयां त्वच्छिन्दात्वस्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात्.
கமா எங்க குருத்த
कुरुत इति and then comma
त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदित्यूर्णनाभात् प्रतीयां त्वच्चिन्ता त्वत्स्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात् त्वय्येव त्वत्कृतं त्वं क्षपयसि जगदित्यूर्णनाभात् प्रतीयां त्वच्चिन्ता त्वत्स्वरूपं कुरुत इति दृढं शिक्षये पेशकारात्
विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो कॉमा भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं कॉमा दत्ते संचिन्त्य मानो कॉमा मम तु बहु रुजा पीडितोयं विशेषात्. Eventually the body is going to turn into ashes, so the body itself is temporary. So that is another reason to not get too attached to the body. Of course, you have to take care of your body, like Bhattacharya said in Dasakam 3. He says that you have to keep my legs strong so I can come and visit you in temples. You need to keep my hands strong so I can offer you, flowers. You need to keep my nose strong so I can smell the tulasi. You need to keep my eyes strong so I can see the beautiful picture of yours, right? So the body is important because it is a vehicle to get you to God, but you cannot get too attached to the body because eventually the body, it's going to turn into ashes or it's going to have so many problems. Anyway, that is a lesson learned. विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं धत्ते संचिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्.
विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो भवति गुरुवरोऽयं विवेकं विरक्तिं दत्ते संचिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्. विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं दत्ते संचिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्.
भस्म आत्मा.
Thank you. That helps.
विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं धत्ते संचिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्. विद्भस्मात्मा च देहो भवति गुरुवरो यो विवेकं विरक्तिं धत्ते संचिन्त्यमानो मम तु बहुरुजा पीडितोऽयं विशेषात्.
That's a nice. हि मे देहमोहं त्यज पवनपुराधीश यत्प्रेम हेतोः गेहे वित्ते कलत्रादिषु च विवशिताः त्वत्पदं विस्मरन्ति सोऽयं वन्येषु नो वा परमिह परतः साम्प्रतं चाक्षिकर्णत्वज्जिह्वाभ्याभिकर्षन्त्यवशमत इतः कोऽपि न त्वत्पदाब्जे. This is actually a prayer in the 9th stanza, where, he says that, like we spoke about, right? We accumulate, all these possessions and everything, the purpose of it is for one's own body. Because people can say, no, I actually do it for my family. Now, the example that is given is you take your spouse, whoever that is. Imagine if that person was not your spouse. Will you still be doing the same thing for that person? You won't, right? The only reason you are doing it for that person or that child, because everybody has children, you can take any 13-year-old who is out there. Do you show the same amount of love, affection, and caring and everything for the 13-year-old? No. The only reason is because they're connected to you. So when you look at every single thing that you are doing, every single possession, everything you're doing, it all comes back to it is somehow connected to you. If it is not connected to you, you don't do it. I'm talking in general, including me, right? It all comes back to our own self. It's all coming back to us, right? So because we love us the most, because of which everything we do always comes back. And you can pick any example. If you deny it, you pick up any example and say, they have the 5 whys in corporate world. Why are you, why? When you do the 5 why, the 5th why is going to be because it's somehow connected to you, or because it is giving you happiness, because it is giving you something, right? So that is what. So he says, no, so all these things take priority. And he says, because of which it says the soul, when it comes in, it is just so conditioned to care for itself that it starts doing things around it to only focus on it. So he says, Bhattaripad is praying here, by chanting, you are praying, saying, get me away from this infatuation that I have for my own body. For me, I love myself so much. So please get rid of that love I have for me, because of which I end up doing all these things, right? And he says, at the end of the day, this body is going to be worthless, right? Because the soul is what matters. So help me understand the importance of my soul and not the importance of my body, which is getting so distracted with all these senses and everything. And then, make me focus on you, O Guru Ayappa, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to carry on. Just like how a tree lays a seed, and from that seed, another tree is going to sprout, right? The seed you are laying is the karma you are doing, right? This body of yours is going to be gone in this birth. Next birth, you're going to get a completely different body, but your soul still remains the same. The good and the bad things you do are still going to continue. Those are the seeds you are laying. So he says, help me realize this so I don't get attached to the body, but maybe get attached to your soul. Realize that you are the soul, and whatever you are doing is laying the seeds, right? Which is important for the next birth and several future births as well. And he says, so this is the only way I can get to you, and that's why the body is a very important guru as well. So he me deha moham tyaja pavana puradhisha yat prema hetoho. So put a visarga at the end of that line, comma, no stop in the middle of the line. Yat prema hetoho. Next on the gehe, there is a ir that will go away. Gehe vitte kalatradishu cha vivashitaha. This is, remove that is, put a visarga, comma, vivashitaha. Tvatpadam vismaranti. Hi me deha moham tyaja pavana puradhisha yat prema hetoho gehe vitte kalatra dishu cha vivashitaha tvatpadam vismaranti.
Hi me dehamoham tyaja pavanapurādīshayat prema hetoho gehe vitte kalatradishu cha vivashitaha tvatpadam vismaranti. Hi me dehamoham tyaja pavanapurādīshayat prema hetoho gehe vitte kalatradishu cha vivashitaha tvatpadam vismaranti.
हि मे देहमोहं त्यज पवनपुराधीश यत्प्रेमहेतोः गेहे वित्ते कलद्रादिषु च विवशिताः त्वत्पदं विस्मरन्ति हि मे देहमोहं त्यज पवनपुराधीश यत्प्रेमहेतोः गेहे वित्ते कलद्रादिषु च विवशिताः त्वत्पदं विस्मरन्ति.
Soyam vannesh shunova paramiha parataha, comma, sampratan in sound, sampratan chakshi karna, put a plus, twag jihvadhya Vikarshantyava shamata. I cannot break that word. Vikarshantyava shamata itaha, comma. So third line, comma after paramiha parataha. And then the whole thing continues. And then shamata itaha, comma. Kopi na tvat padabje. सोऽयं वह्नेषु नो वा परमिह परतः साम्प्रतञ्चाक्षिकर्णत्वग्जिह्वाद्या विकर्षन्त्यवशमत इतः कोऽपि न त्वत्पदाब्जे.
I have a question, Rajesh. So Vikashandya, is it avashamata or vashamata?
It is vikarshanti avashamata. Okay, two different words.
Okay.
But then that becomes the sandhi becomes vikarshanti avashamata.
So it's avashamata, that's what's meant, right?
Yeah, that's the word there, yes.
Thank you. Soyam vagneshu no vaparamiha paradaha sampratanchakshikarnatwagjiha jihwadya vigarshantyavashamata itaha kopina tvatpadapje. Soyam vagneshu no vaparamiha paradaha Sampradanchakshikarnatvagjihwadya vigashyantavashamata idaha kopi na tvatpatapje.
Soyam vanneshu no va paramiha parataha sampratanchakshikarnatvag. Is it Tvagjihvadya vicharsantya vasamata itaha kopinatvad-padabje. Soyam vanneshu no va paramiha parataha sampratanchakshikarnatvag-jihvadya vicharsantya vasamata itaha kopinatvad-padabje.
Shrikant, the fourth line, second word, vikarshantyava shamata.
Vikar, oh, not Vichar, it's Vikar.
Yeah. Ka, first ka, vikarshan.
Okay, thank you.
Translate. Durvaro deha moho yadi punaradhuna tarhi nishesha rogan kritva bhaktim dhadishtam kurutava pada pankeruhe pankajaksha nunam nana bhavante samadhigatamimam muktidam vipradeham shudre hahanta mama kshipa vishayarase pahi mam marutesha. Like 9, 10 is also a prayer. He says, 9, he says, Guru Arapa, please bless me so that I do not get this attachment towards my body. In this, he's saying, if that obsession to my body is not avoidable, it's unavoidable for me, at least get rid of all the problems I'm having so I don't get too distracted, and give me bhaktim dradishtham. Give me very firm devotion to you, O Guru Arapa, because this body, like we said, the human body, you gotten after so many births, and you don't know how many of the human births you have wasted previously. So let me not waste this human birth of mine, like we started before, right, into unnecessary sensory pleasures, and make me always focused on you, so eventually I can get liberated. So he says, at least give me that blessing, right? Even though I'm not able to get rid of the obsession to my body, bless me so that I don't waste it going forward. So durvaro deha moho yadi punaradhuna, comma, tarhi nishesha rogan kritva. So that put a plus at the end of that line, and after kritva put a comma, kritva, comma, bhaktim dradishtham kuru tava pada pankeruhe pankajaksha. Pankajaksha is one who's got lotus eyes. Durvaro deha moho yadi punaradhuna tarhi nishesha rogan kritva bhaktim dradishtham kuru tava pada pankeruhe pankajaksha.
Durvaro dehamoho yadi punaradhuna tarhi nishesha rogan hrutva bhaktim dradishtam kurutava pada pangeruhe pankajaksha. Durvaro dehamoho yadi punaradhuna tarhi nishesha rogan hrutva bhaktim dradishtam kurutava pada Pangeruhe Pangajaksha.
Shashidaka, one time porom, we'll finish it.
Okay. Okay. Durvaro dehamoho yadi punaradhuna tarhi nishesha rogan ritva bhaktim dradishtham kurutava pada pankeruhe pankajaksha.
Noonam nana bhavante, comma, samadhi gata mimam. Some books have samadhi gata mamum. If you have mamum, just change it to samadhi gata mimam. Muktidam vipradeham, comma, shudre ha hanta mama kshipa vishaya rase, comma, pahimam marutesha. Noonam nana bhavante samadigatamimam muktidam vipradeham shudre ha hanta mama kshipa vishaya rase pahimam marutesha.
Nunam nana bhavante samadigatamibam muktidam vipradeham shudre hahanda mama kshipavishayarase pahimam marutesha.
Nunam nana bhavante samadhigatamimum muktidam vipradeham shudreha hanta mama kshipa vishayarase pahima marutesha.
Second, third line la samadhi gata mimam neganda mu sound kettudu. Samadhi gata mimam.
Oh, okay. Is it okay? Sorry, it's mimam or mimum?
Mimam.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. Sandhanandhavabodhatmakamanupamitam kaladeshavadibhyam nirmuktam nityamuktam nigamashatasahasrena nirbhasyamanam aspashtam drishtabhatre punarurupurusharthatmakam brahmatattvam tattavadbhadi sakshat guru pavanapure hanta bhagyam jananam kahena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmana va prakrite swabhavat karhomi yatyat sakalam parasmai narayanaayeti samharpayami. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rajesh.
Rajesh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Very loaded chapter today.
Very loaded.
Very loaded. Yeah.
I will be able to
I have
finish.
to go back to the recording.
No, I will send a summary. I have a table which says, okay, these are the 25 gurus and what are the learnings from the 25 gurus.
Very good. Yeah, thank you.
Simple, like couple of words, so you don't have to. You have the general context, right? But it will just tell you this is the thing. Here is a takeaway learning, right? So
Yeah. Thank
that
you.
is interesting
Thank you,
because when you start observing it now, once you hear it a few
Correct.
times, now that I've said it a few times, for me it's easier that when I look at something, I can relate to it, saying, okay, this was the takeaway from that. When you kind of look at it, right?
ஆமா, நீங்க இன்னைக்கு சொன்னதுக்கு அப்புறமா பின்னாடி எல்லாம் யோசிச்சு பார்த்தா, ஓ இதெல்லாமே பண்ணிருக்க கூடாதோ அப்படின்னு எல்லாம் தோன்றது ரொம்ப கஷ்டமா இருக்கு. இதை விட நான் இன்னும் பாகவதம் படிச்சேன்னா நான் என்னையே கில் பண்ணிடுவேன்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
You cannot go back and fix.
நிஜமாவே லிட்டரலி இன்னைக்கு நீங்க நான் இன்னண்ட நகர்ல என் கண்ணுல அப்படியே வெளியிலே வந்துட்டு, ஓகே கிருத்திகா நல்ல கர்மா தான் உனக்கு அப்படின்ட்டு.
No. You cannot change what has already been done. You cannot change it.
Correct.
Right? So at least the thing is, you use this as an inflection point to go change in future, right?
நான் என்ன நினைச்சிட்டு இருக்கேன், நான் என்ன கத்தினாலும் கோயிலுக்கு போயிட்டு வந்துடுறோம், செஞ்சுடுறோம், அடுத்து போயிட்டு வந்து இன்னொரு 4 கத்தலாம் நம்மள சாமி விட்டுடுவாருன்னு. சோ இப்ப என்ன வச்சு செஞ்சுடுவாருன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். நீ வாயே திறக்காதேன்னு. அதுதான் உங்களை பாகவதமும் எடுங்கன்னு நான் கேக்குறேன். நீங்க மாட்டேன்ற ராஜேஷ் இப்படி
Let's finish Narayaneeyam.
Okay. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.